whenever or wherever you're listening to or watching us. This is the Awesemo NHL DFS Strategy Show, and I am your host, Michael Clifford, aka Slim Cliffy. Joining me in Madripoor to tear up the dance floor with Baron Zemo is our very own Winter Soldier, Mr. Joshua Harris. Josh, how you doing today, bud?
I have a Bucky tattoo, but I'm not going to tell you anyone where. Yeah, it's pretty good. Nice little Wednesday. Yesterday was a weird one, especially because there was the one light game and Rope was out, but those are the gambles we take.
Yeah, before we get to that, did you watch the Falcon and the Winter Soldier?
I have not. It's on the docket for this weekend.
Okay, yeah, I think you'll enjoy it. The episodes are longer than WandaVision. They're like 45 or 50 minutes, and it's more like spy thriller action type stuff. So I think of people that like the MCU that weren't really into WandaVision, like I understand why. I think you'll dig Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but we're not here to talk about the MCU. We are here to talk about the NHL. Looking back at last night's slate, Nashville went smash city. I think it was 2 goals and an assist for Arvidsson, pair of assists for Johansson, a goal and assist for Grimaldi, and then a goal and 2 assists for Roman Josi or something like that. So you really needed Nashville 1 plus Josi to get somewhere last night. And then you had Washington just pile up 6 goals, but the top line really didn't do anything.
No. And I guess like the Mantha line is the one you needed. And I was surprised because like Hall was like 24%, but Mantha was only 9%. I guess because he wasn't on the top power play, but neither was Hall. So like I guess everyone gravitated to Hall. But yeah, that Washington second line fit with Nashville 1. So if you had that combo, that's good. I had Rope Hintz, so I know Jamie Benn slotted in there, which he was cheaper, but I swapped to Florida 1, which started off okay and just kind of died out.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I had Rope Hintz in for Dallas. And that was the thing that we talked about on the show yesterday, right? Last game of the slate, if you're betting on Rope Hintz being in the lineup, you're going to be wrong quite often because he is constant day to day. And I did the same thing. Switched over to Florida 1. Barkov got a fairly early goal, I think, and then we just didn't get much from them from the rest of the game. But I did see Dustin Dromarecki had another good night. I think he said it was 3rd and 5th in the twine, and then took down the late, if I'm not mistaken. Or
I think he was like won a secondary one, I think, or something.
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, he had another good night. Always love seeing our subscribers do well. Seems like he's had a good little month over the last 3 or 4 weeks. So, it's one of those things with NHL DFS that a good 2 weeks can make your entire season. So even though, maybe you've had a tough season to date, maybe you haven't had the results that you've wanted to, lots of people haven't, there's still a month of hockey left. There's still 4 weeks of hockey left. There's still time, definitely turn your season around, and we're going to help you turn your season around a little bit here today, hopefully. Before we get going here, just want to let everybody know that if you're not able to watch your favorite Awesemo shows on YouTube, almost all of our Awesemo YouTube shows are available through the Awesemo Podcast Network. We've got a podcast for every sport, and we're available on every major platform. So head on over to awesemo.com/podcast to check out the latest. Just leave a 5-star review on one of our podcasts with your Twitter handle or email address, and you'll be eligible to win a free week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. One winner is awarded every Friday, and reviews are eligible to win for up to 1 year. So you can win this summer, next winter, even next spring. Just head to awesemo.com/podcast, leave a 5-star review with your Twitter handle or email address. You can win a free week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Pretty good deal. And while you guys are here, a big thing you can do to help us out if you aren't subscribing to Awesemo Plus Platinum is just drop us a like and especially subscribe. Subscriptions really help grow this channel, keep these shows coming all the time. We have shows coming, rapid fire. Today, we already had an NBA strategy show. We already had an MLB Live Before Lock after us. It's the MLB Tip-Off show later tonight. There's going to be a couple NBA shows, including a Live Before Lock. And then there's PGA tonight with Ben and Eric. So lots of stuff going on in the sports world, and we're all covered here at Awesemo. So if you could, while you're here, please just throw us a little subscribe. It'll help us out a lot. First impressions on tonight's slate. We have 5 games ahead of us. We have a pair of Canadian teams. People usually like picking Canadian teams to score because the Canadian teams are fairly weak defensively. There's a lot of backups across the board tonight, and there's one game that has a lot of danger in it. So what are your impressions here on the slate tonight?
Yeah, it's interesting because there's only one pay up spot, which may get canceled. But so I think, with like if the super expensive spot goes away, or even if it stays on, if you're not using the Avs top line, I think, a way to get different is leave a little bit of salary on the table because there's so many decent like mid-range lines that you can get in tonight. So if you're worried about dupes, you can leave a little bit of salary on the table. There's a lot of spots that I like tonight. There's some spots that I really don't like, but on a short slate, we have to consider them, especially if you're doing 150 lineups. So, yeah, you just got to look out for that Colorado Avs Blues news.
Yeah, so let's talk about that real quick. Obviously, we'll talk about it more once we get to the game, but just in general, like we have a 5-game slate tonight. Colorado St. Louis starts 30 minutes after the slate locks. So it's not starting right at lock, but if something were to happen to that game, there's still a couple games that start later where you can switch over. Now, we should let everybody know, if you haven't seen the news today, Colorado had a positive COVID test. And we saw something, I think it was Calgary and Edmonton earlier this year, where a Calgary player had a positive test, and they said that the game was going to go on. And then I think like 90 minutes before the game started, we found out that the game was canceled. Now, that was a Calgary game that was late at night. This is a game that's fairly early in the night. So if it's 90, if they can let us know 90 minutes beforehand, then we can rearrange our lineups accordingly because none of the games will have been locked at that point. But if we can't find out, basically until warmups, then we're only left with a couple games to switch to. So I want to ask you a hypothetical. Let's say we find out at warmup the Colorado St. Louis is being canceled, which means 2 games have already locked and we only have 2 games left to switch to. If something like that were to happen, would you want to roster players in that game thinking everybody's going to stay off them, not wanting to take that risk of a cancellation, not wanting to have to deal with the late swaps and all that? Or are you somebody that just doesn't want to deal with those late swaps and you just won't put players from that game in there unless, we get some sort of confirmation here in the next few hours?
I'll liken it to weather games in baseball, right? So like if there's a game that has a decent chance of getting postponed, but it's not 100%, one cloud and it's orange red. No, but if it's like, there's like a 40% chance of postponement and people are just going to start looking elsewhere, I'm going to load them in and just, wait as long as I can and see if I can get an update. So like with this being right in the middle of the slate and there's, Vegas behind them, I think, I'd be more apt to put in the Avs because if I can get them at any time, if I can get them at lower ownership, I want to do that. But if it does get canceled, there is some, decent expensive fallback options. Like I can get in the Knights, I can get in some Sharks, there's ways where I can, swap and not have to leave like 13,000 of salary on the table.
Yeah, I hear that. That's the nice thing about having Vegas late here is that, they are cheaper than Colorado one, but, if you can swap a defenseman or something like that, like a cheap defenseman up to Alex Pietrangelo, it could all work out. One thing I would say is that if it's something you're worried about, then make sure your stacks are all from the later games. Like if you're going to play Colorado, make sure your secondary stack is from like Anaheim or San Jose or Los Angeles or something like that. Or if you're going to play St. Louis, make sure your other stacks are in those late games or a game stack with Colorado if you don't really want to deal with that headache, because then you have your entire lineup left to play with and you don't have to worry so much about sticking players, whoever's left, in your lineups and like you said, eating thousands of dollars in salary. So that's one thing I'll say is that if you're really worried about it, just make sure all your players in your lineup, or at least all your skaters, start at 7:30 Eastern or later. All right, we got to get to these games, so let's get right to them. Let's get to our first one, a Canadian matchup. Like I alluded to earlier, we have the Calgary Flames with a 2.5 goal total. They are going into Montreal. Montreal has a 3.1 implied goal total. I believe it's going to be Carey Price for the Habs. We don't have a goalie yet for the Flames, but as I was telling Josh before the show, this is pretty much do or die for the Flames because I think they have 14 games left. and they're 6 points behind the Habs for the final playoff spot, and the Habs have 3 fewer games played. So if the Habs were to win tonight in regulation, let's say, then the Habs are 8 points up with Calgary only having 13 games left and the Habs having 16. So it's probably over. So I think it'll be Markstrom tonight because this is about as close to a must-win game as it gets for Calgary. So assuming we have Allen versus Markstrom, what do you like here, Josh?
Yeah, so I mean, the Flames won last night, but the Leafs looked awful. So I don't know. That game was brutal. From DFS, from watching it, like it's like watching paint dry in the third period. But like, it's interesting because there's a lot of cheap lines here tonight, and I would expect the Danault, Tatar, Byron line to get the Lindholm, Tkachuk, Gaudreau matchup. And it's weird because like I know it's a 5-game slate, but 7% on that Montreal line worries me a little bit just because, one, that's the toughest matchup for the Flames. Two, I don't know who's going to score on that line. Maybe Paul Byron. I don't know. Like Tatar, like the tuna fish is okay, but I don't think he shoots enough. So, on the Montreal side, I'd probably be off that Montreal top line. I really want to attack the Mangiapane, Monahan, Dubé line because Monahan and Dubé are just bad defensively, and that's probably going to be the Drouin, Kotkaniemi, Anderson line. And coincidentally, that's the most popular line in our ownership run for the Habs, but it's still under 10%, and they are very cheap. So I think that is my favorite line for the Habs tonight, Drouin, Kotkaniemi, Anderson. They don't have perfect power play correlation, but we don't really play the Canadiens for their power play. It's not Minnesota Wild bad, but it's pretty bad. So at what they're like 12-4 for the full line, getting a very, very soft defensive matchup. I really like that line. If you want to go to that the other line, Toffoli, Suzuki, Joel Armia, you're going to get Lucic back on Nordstrom. With Nordstrom there, I don't know how he is defensively, but it's probably an easier matchup than the Lindholm Tkachuk matchup. So if you want to go to Toffoli, Suzuki for that power play, that's fine. Armia is min price in the top 6, so I'm sure the cash sharks are swarming. They smell blood in the water, and they'll probably lock them in. But for me, on the Habs, it's that Drouin, Kotkaniemi, Anderson line, some Toffoli, Anderson, Armia. And then on the Calgary side, I mean, if you want to go to that top line in MME, I think that's fine. I'm probably going to be off the Flames for the most part in 1 to 3. There's not really much that I want from them. Maybe, I'll have, a Noah Hannafin or Mark Giordano on the blue line, but from a line perspective in 1 to 3, I don't think I'll be on any of them. I do, if you want to play that top line, I think that's an MME play.
Yeah, the Calgary top line for me is always of interest because there's just so much talent there, right? And if any other lines, any line can do anything on any given night, but I think if you were to favor any line to really go off tonight on the Calgary side, it would be the Calgary top line. They looked decent last night, I will say. Whether you want to say is because they look good or Toronto looked bad, I'm not going to say one way or the other. But that's where I would go on the Calgary side. I agree with you. But I'm just not in on the Flames here tonight. Back-to-back on the road is just not something that I target very often. I wouldn't begrudge anybody for wanting to do it because I think you'll probably get them at reasonable ownership. I mean, we had them coming in right around 6 to 7%, which is about their top 2 stack percentage, so it's fine. I'm not getting a whole lot of leverage, but it's a fine spot. For the Montreal side, it's that Toffoli line is the line that I'm really zeroing in on here. Toffoli, Suzuki, and Armia. They won't get that Monahan. They'll get some of the Dubé. Like when I want to say one thing, like when we talk about line matchups, people should know that 100% of your matchups don't go against the other line 100% of the time during the game, right? Like even the most like really strict line matchers are only about 90%. Most teams will float somewhere around 70%. So when we say that they're going to be matched up against so-and-so, even most teams will only be somewhere around the 60 to 70% mark. So just keep that in mind that they're not going to be out there every single minute in the tough matchup. But all the same, like Drouin, like he has been shooting a bit, but he's not really a goal scorer. Kotkaniemi's not a goal scorer. Josh Anderson is. You only have one guy that can really score on that line, and we have them as a big negative leverage play. So I'm basically out on the Kotkaniemi, Anderson, Drouin line. And I agree with you with the top line with Danault, Bar, and Tatar. Like Tatar can score, but he's not a massive goal scorer. He'll score 20, 25 goals a year, but he's not a big volume shooter, like you said. Paul Byron can score too, but in a depth role, and he's not really a grind it, playmaker like Danault is. Like he's more of a go get it, crash and bang, straight line type of guy. So I see them doing well as a shutdown line, as a scoring line. I have my doubts. So I'm going to that Suzuki to Foley Armia line. I agree with you. I think Suzuki to Foley have looked good when they've had the chance this year. Their ownership is in check, right in line at around 5%. And I think Armia coming back is going to keep that ownership a little low. Hopefully people will miss a little bit of that news. On the blue line, like we talked yesterday about how Calgary changed up their line. So Anderson and Giordano are still in the top PP unit. So I guess Anderson for PP 1 minutes of 4K isn't bad. If you want to use Hanifin, 3,600 secondary PP minutes, that's fine. On the Montreal side, like Alexander Romanov seems to be shooting a lot, but that's not really a guy that I'm super excited to use. Do you have any interest in any of the blue liners here?
Not particularly. I mean, on a short slate, you have to get the defenseman right if you want to win. I mean, maybe there's scenarios where you don't, but most of the time you have to. I guess like Petrie at 5,800 is okay. He's just like that price for what he's been doing is a bit worrisome. Like Shea Weber at, if you want to play him for the power play, I guess, but like I don't really play the Habs for the power play, so you really need Weber to score on the power play for him to pay off. So if you want to dump down to Kulak at min price, I guess that's okay if you need, but I don't know if there's a need to really go down that far tonight on the slate unless you're, forcing in the Avs.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like there's just, like you said, there's just not a lot of expensive spots here tonight. So there's just not a lot of need to dumpster dive. Like Romanoff, like I said, he has been shooting. He's been near 2 shots per game over the last month, but he's only playing 17 minutes a night. So I guess at a certain point you have to get lucky with any punt, right? Like anytime you punt a defenseman, you do have to get a bit lucky. It just seems like Romanoff would have to get a little bit luckier than most. So I think he's fine as a punt, but I'm definitely not somebody that I'm targeting heavily. One thing I want to mention before we get to the goalies, I brought it up to you a couple of days ago that Montreal hadn't been taking a lot of penalties lately. Only 4 minutes per game at 4-on-5 on the PK over their last 8 games. It seems to me like they're starting to figure out their discipline issues, and it's coincidentally it seems like it's been since Julien got fired. So maybe they were just trying to get him fired or something. I don't know. Goalies in this game, we don't know if Markstrom's going to start. It's probably going to be Allen. Who do you like here?
I kind of like Allen in this spot. I'm not a big spend up on goalie guy, but like at 8,000 at home against a team on a back-to-back that went to overtime with that's not a great team. I think, there's some merit there, especially if you're using Canadiens. As a one-off, I think you can consider him as well. I prefer Jake Allen to carry price for the Canadiens, but at that price, I think it's okay. There might be some cheaper options that you like better, and that's fine, but I definitely correlate Allen, and especially in Canadiens lineups.
Yeah, I hear that. I got a little trivia for you. Over the last month, who do you think has the highest shot rate on the Habs amongst the forwards?
Highest shot rate.
I'll give you a hint. It's on their 4th line.
I was gonna say Arturi Lehkonen. Actually.
Yeah, it's Lehkonen. Yeah. He has their highest shot rate over the last month. If you look just over his last handful of games, 4 shots, 3 shots, 2 shots, 4 shots, 0, 2. 15 shots over his last 6 games, only playing 12 minutes a night. There's a guy I don't mind dumpster diving on because the Habs don't treat their 4th line as a typical 4th line. They'll get 12, 13 minutes of ice time.
And they're going to just, like Eric Stahl, Perry, they are who they are, but they're still, they used to be very good. And
they're better. They're better than most 4th lines.
They're going to get, God knows who on the Flames. Like they're just going to get, like the beer vendors. So I think it's an okay. Like if you want to go to a 4th line, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I don't mind Lehkonen as a punt one-off here tonight. I would say I'd probably actually rather play him than Romanoff in my utility, if I had the choice between the two. But anyways, we don't need to keep talking about punts here. We need to move along. Just want to let everybody know we have a bunch of free stuff up on the site today like we usually do. It seems like we have free content almost every day here. Today, being no exception. We have MLB ownership projections up for everybody. We have PGA player projections up on Awesemo.com. We have our NBA big board up for free. And also, you've heard us talking about our top stacks tool here on the show so far today. Our NHL top stacks tool is also free on our website. So if you want to get a little bit of help, whether you're playing MLB, NBA, NHL, or PGA, we have some free tools up on the site for you. So head on over to Awesemo.com, see what we have going on. All right, moving on to our next game. We have the Winnipeg Jets with a 3.4 implied goal total. They're going into Ottawa. The Sens have a 2.6 implied goal total. The Jets are going to be starting Laurent Brossoit because they have a back-to-back against the Leafs tomorrow. So it'll be Hellebuck tomorrow, Brossoit tonight. Matt Murray returns from injury. I think he's been out over a month now. First game back with the Sens, Matt Murray in net. Just want to point out a little tweet I sent out earlier today about Sens goaltending. Up until Matt Murray's injury, the Sens were a distant last in the league in all strength save percentage at 875. Since his injury, they're 17th in the league at 906. Matt Murray back tonight. If you look at our ownership, nothing super crazy about Winnipeg. Like, we have the top line coming in around 15%. We have the second line coming in just under 10%, which feels fine, especially considering the spot. So let's start with Ottawa. Is there anything on the Ottawa side that you like here? And then tell us what you like with Winnipeg.
I kind of like that Ottawa top line. Ownership agrees. I mean, they're over 10%. It's not surprising. They're fully correlated on the power play. Not that, the Sens have a vaunted power play, but, the Jets penalty kill has, isn't anything special. It is Brossoit. And, Scheifele, I don't want to say dusty, but he hasn't been the best defensively this season. That Scheifele, Wheeler, Stastny line had a good few weeks defensively, but any other iteration with Scheifele up there, they can be had defensively. And I think, Brady Tkachuk is, he's the man on the Sens. So if you're going to use a Sens line, I think, Chuck Norris Batherson makes some sense. Other than that, I don't really like how their lines are constructed. Nick Paul, Colin White, Dadonov is actually okay, but the power play correlation isn't great. You get White and Dadonov on second. They're a good filler line, like a decent filler line in MME if you're, jamming some Colorado power play. But if I was going to go to a line in the Sens, it'd definitely be that top line. If you want to, third and fourth line just don't do it for me. I was going to talk myself out of it.
I could just see you trying to figure out that, is there something there?
So that first line, second line, decent filler in MME, especially if you're using a lot of Colorado. On the Jet side, I think, I like that top line, Connor, Scheifele, Kopp. It is a bit of a tough matchup because not only they're going to get Norris and Tkachuk, they're also going to get the Chabot pairing the most of the time. If you want to use them, that's perfectly fine. It's because the Sens aren't a good team, and we've discussed that ad nauseum on this show. But the one pairing and the one line that you kind of want to avoid is Tkachuk and Chabot. So if you want to use that top line because they're very good, that's fine. But I think, in a limited amount of lineups, where I would go is the Pierre-Luc Dubois, Stastny, Ehlers line. They're a little bit cheaper, a little bit less owned, and they get a way better matchup. Because once you get past Chabot, once you get past Norris and Tkachuk, the Sens can be had. And it is Matt Murray in net. He's coming back after a month. God knows what he's going to be like tonight. So I like the second line the most. I do like that top line if you want to use it. That'd be a more MME play, and I know they're higher owned, so I'd probably be under the field in them in MME, but I would definitely get to them. The more lineups I make, the more I'd have, 20 to 50 to 100, something like that. The more I make, the more I'd have. But in 1 to 3, I think the second line is where I'd be. If you want to, one off Mason Appleton for the power play, do whatever you want. It's not something I do, but he is on the top power play as a short slate, so we got to get a little funky sometimes. So Winnipeg 2 is my favorite spot. Winnipeg 1 in MME, Sens 1, a little bit of Sens 2 as a filler is where I'm at in this game.
Yeah, the one thing I want to point out initially is these two teams played a couple nights ago, and the Sens actually sent out their fourth line quite a bit against Scheifele. Like they used the Donoff Paul and the Formenton Tierney Brown line. They used those two lines basically exclusively against Scheifele and Kopp and Connor. So like like I like that Kachuk Norris Batherson line. I just think that I'd rather see them like I want to see them get a lot of that Winnipeg one matchup. I just don't know how much of it they're going to get here tonight. They're going to get some, just not a ton. Like they saw a fair bit of the second and third lines from Winnipeg, which like if they see the Winnipeg third line like for even half the game, then yeah, I love that Ottawa top line here tonight because that Winnipeg third line is just absolutely nothing to write home about. So I really do like that Ottawa top line. Um, I'm just worried that they get into too many matchups against that second line, especially where we don't have them coming in super low owned, right? Like we have the Ottawa top line coming in at 12% against a 10% top two stack percentage. So like I want to use that Ottawa line because I think they can get in a good matchup, but I think they're going to spend some time in a bad matchup, and I think they're going to be overowned. So that's what's keeping me away from Ottawa in this game. I'm actually moving more towards the Winnipeg top line, which, like, surprise, surprise, Winnipeg top line's in a good matchup. But if they're going to send out Chris Tierney and a rookie and Alex Formenton up against that Winnipeg top line, I'll take that Winnipeg top line because you're right. Like Scheifele has been really bad defensively this year, but I'm wondering how much of it wasn't Wheeler. Because if you look at their isolated impacts, like Wheeler, his defensive impacts were like off the charts bad, like the complete inverse of Connor McDavid's offensive abilities. So like, not that Kopp is some super elite two-way winger, but he has to be better than Wheeler, right? Like at least the way Wheeler's been playing in 2021. So even though they're going to be a little bit higher owned, I do like that Winnipeg top line, but I'm with you. I like that Winnipeg second line as well. So it's like, if I had to pick one or the other, I think I would put Winnipeg one in order of preference for favorite, but in order for the entire game, it would go Winnipeg one, then Winnipeg two, and then probably Ottawa one after that. So I'm in more on the Winnipeg side here. Like I said, on the Ottawa side, just not a lot of interest in Kachuk. Well, I do have some interest in Kachuk Norris. Like I said, they'll get some third line matchups, and that's really good. I'm just not super high on them as a team at the moment. Ottawa's penalty kill has been really bad of late, like last in the NHL over the last 3 weeks. So by expected goals against per 60 minutes. So I think like if you're worried about ownership with Winnipeg, I hate to say it, but I think I agree with you. Like you could throw in a Mason Appleton or something like that just to get a little bit different. That's where I am for forwards in this game. On defense, Nikita Zaitsev in the first game without Mike Riley played 28 minutes. That seems like a lot of minutes. He's a guy that blocks about 5 shots per 60. So if he's playing near 30, he's well on his way to a shot block bonus already. So I don't mind Nikita Zaitsev. I suspect Eric Brandstrom will take the power play 2 duties that Mike Riley had been using for Ottawa. I don't know if you have a different take there. What do you like for defenseman here?
Yeah, I mean, Zaitsev at 3,800 with those minutes. I don't know if was it Matei? He's going to play tonight? I know the Sens claimed him. Was he in last game?
Mete? Yeah, Mete played last game, but he only played 10 minutes.
Yeah, so I mean, Zaitsev is going to get monster minutes again at that price. I'm all about it. If you're, putting in that top Ottawa line, Chabot obviously makes sense, but Zaitsev is my favorite one off there. On the Jet side, it's really, I know the Sens penalty kill has been awful, so Morrissey makes the most sense. But if you're not correlating power play one, I prefer Pionk or even Forbort. But really, I'm kind of off the Jets defenseman in a one-off spot.
Yeah, I don't really like a whole lot of their defensemen either. So I'll get to the goalies. Are you playing a 7K Matt Murray, or are we out on Matt Murray?
Man. It's just like I like he's 7,000 at home, but I don't know. Like if you're playing, Sens lineups, I think you can put him in and just hope he doesn't get bombarded. But like I just have that eerie feeling that like the Jets are just gonna get 5 on him. So like I am worried. So in a couple Senators roundups, I'll have him, but for the most part, I'm off of him.
Yeah, I'm off of him too. I guess the question is like, do we play Brossois at 8,100? I want to talk about him just for 1 second because like we were talking about him in chat earlier today, and I brought up some of his stats from the last 3 years. Like he's in the top 75th percentile of goals saved above expected, in top 70 and 75th percentile in high danger save percentage. But that's a small sample. We're talking fewer than 50 games. That's not even a full season. So like he has been good, but it's been in a small sample, and he's 8,100 on the road. Like I think there's shutout potential here, but I want to get your thoughts on whether you'd actually think, like outside of a correlated lineup, would you play Brossois here tonight?
Probably not, just because Jake Allen's $100 cheaper at home, and playing a team back to back on the road. Normally I would definitely consider, because Hellebuck would have been like the chalk goalie tonight. So you have to at least consider the backup, like how big, like, yeah, it's a downgrade, but like, it's not like going from like Hellebuck to, Jonas Johansson, like
Or Martin Jones.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so like, I think you can consider it. Just on this slate, I probably play Jake Allen.
Yeah. Oh, okay. No, I agree with that. I think outside of correlated lineups, I wouldn't play Brossois either. Before we get to our next game, let's talk about our brand new show sponsor. It's Jock Market. Now, what Jock Market has done is turn fantasy sports into a stock exchange. Jock Market allows you to buy and sell shares of players in real time for real money with guaranteed payouts for all shares at the end of each night. With daily markets for NBA, NHL, and PGA, you can make real money every hour, every minute, every second of any match or game. Use a pregame IPO to pick up shares of your favorite players, then buy, sell, or hold them during the game based on your own analysis. Download the app to get started and use our exclusive Awesemo promo code Awesemo NHL20 for a $20 bonus on your first deposit. This is an exclusive offer only for the Awesemo community, so make sure to take advantage of it today. That's our show sponsor, Jock Market, promo code Awesemo NHL20 for a free $20 bonus on your first deposit. All right. Let's get to this next game. This is an important one. Colorado with a 3.2 implied goal total going into St. Louis. The Blues have a 2.4 implied goal total. Before we get moving, just want to say that Don Radke, welcome to Team Awesemo. I see you joined here in chat. Welcome to the team. Remember, everybody, if you want to get to throw up your YouTube badges. Getting back to the game for a second, Colorado had a positive COVID test this morning, canceled morning skate. They're saying this game is still on tonight, but as we mentioned at the top of the show, this happened earlier in the year with Calgary, where Calgary said that the game would still be on, and then the game wasn't on, and everybody was scrambling for lineups about 45 minutes or an hour before the lineups locked. Now, that Calgary game was much later in the night. Even if we get just 45 minutes of leeway time here, that would be 15 minutes before the slate locks. That would give us at least something. So we're probably going to get clarity one way or another before the slate locks at 7 Eastern. So we're going to talk about it as if this game is going to play. We don't have confirmed goalies because we didn't have a warm-up skate, so we don't know who's going to go. I'd assume it'd be Grubauer and Binnington. If this game goes, what do you like here, Josh?
Yeah, so there's a couple issues, right? Because 90 minutes before, so 6 p.m. Eastern, they have to declare who the positive is, right?
Right.
So if it's Nathan MacKinnon, obviously it's a big problem. If it's Liam O'Brien, I hope he gets better, but it doesn't impact DFS. So first of all, you have to figure out who it is and hope he recovers and hope he's well. Assuming it's someone on the taxi squad or a non-DFS relevant player. I really like the Avs one. Shocker. They're going to get O'Reilly Perron, but as one of my favorite tweets that you have, like, about MacKinnon, like, begging for change on the corner, like, he's matchup proof. So it doesn't really matter. Like, O'Reilly Perron is as sludge fest as they are, like, they're not driving the play here. It's MacKinnon driving the bus. So if they're going to be, around 10% as a collective line on a 5-game slate, sign me up. I like it. If you want to go to that second line, Nishushkin's up there instead of Saad. They're going to get the Shen, Tarasenko, Schwartz line. I think that's a decent matchup for Colorado. I mean, they're going to be super low owned too. So I don't mind that second line. I'm a big Nishushkin guy. Maybe I'm, maybe it's a bad bias, but I do like it. I mean, that's a tough matchup for the Blues there. If you want to go to that third line, I think that third line is going to get some depth of the Blues. They're going to get, Sanford, Bozak, Hoffman. Yost is okay. Saad's okay. Donskoy is my boy. But I think, if you want to get lower ownership in a semi-high ownership game with a decent total, I think you can go to that third line. And on the Blues side, with O'Reilly, Perron, getting the McKinnon matchup that takes me off of them. And I think people because people will play Shen, Schwartz, Tarasenko against, the Monstars. They'll play them against anybody. So they're going to get, inflated ownership, maybe, not 15%, but they'll probably be 8 to 10%. And this is, a tough matchup, especially with Nishushkin and Saad switching. Nishushkin is a much better defensive player than Saad. So, not that there's, many defensive holes on the Avs, but switching Nishushkin and Saad makes that matchup for Shen, Schwartz, Tarasenko much more difficult. So really, I'm kind of off the Blues tonight. Maybe I'll get to some guys on the blue line, but really this is an Avs game for me.
Yeah, I agree with you completely that I'm out on St. Louis, their top two lines. I just think the matchups are too bad, and I agree with you completely on Nichushkin. He doesn't help that line offensively, but he does make that line so much better defensively that it is a big concern. So that's just what's pushing the top two St. Louis lines out of play for me. It's just I think it's a terrible matchup. They're not even playing that well. I know we want to talk about how they needed to get players back and all that. Over the last 3 weeks, Ivan Barbashev and Kyle Clifford lead this team in expected goals for per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. Their stars aren't doing anything. Over the last 3 weeks, St. Louis is 24th by expected goal share, just ahead of Columbus. So I want to, sometimes we can get too wrapped up in players and names, and it's something we talk about sometimes. Maybe people are better off just not knowing about a sport and just playing the numbers rather than trying to dissect how good or bad a player is, et cetera, et cetera. So I want people to just do a little mind exercise here. Pretend this isn't Colorado going into St. Louis. Pretend this is Colorado going into Columbus. If this was Colorado going into Columbus, how much interest would you have in Colorado and how much interest would you have in Columbus, right? The only difference between St. Louis and Columbus is St. Louis keeps their lines together more often. That's really the only difference between those two teams at the moment. Now, I think St. Louis can be really good, and I think they're just going through a down spell, but I can't bank on them suddenly breaking out of a 3-month slump in the middle of April. So I'm in on Colorado here. What the line that I actually like the most is the Colorado third line. Jost, Saad, and Donskoy. Now, you talk about Saad not being great defensively. He is way better offensively than Nichushkin is. That's the trade-off there, right? Nichushkin worse offensively, better defensively, Saad the other way. So Saad, Jost, and Donskoy do have some interest here, especially where they're going to get a fair bit of that third line from St. Louis. And in 66 minutes of time together this year, Bozak and Hoffman have been on the ice for 1.4 expected goals for, 42% expected goals share, 4.5 goals against per 60 minutes. They are getting just beaten up every single time they step on the ice. So if you're looking for a filler line, I really like Colorado 3 here tonight. But I just like the Colorado top 6 in general. If you want to, I will probably be higher on Colorado 1 than any other line here tonight. I don't care about the price. I think this is a great matchup. St. Louis's top 4 defensemen are just getting caved in night after night after night, even with Parayko back. Yeah, he's just not playing enough minutes on the bottom pair. It doesn't matter. So I'm out on St. Louis, in on Colorado. On the blue line, I'm out on St. Louis defenseman, except for I'll never be out on Vinny Dunn for the rest of my life. I'm going to play Vince Dunn as long as he's in the 3K range. So I don't mind Vince Dunn. Anything else sticking out here to you?
Not on the blue side. I mean, Makar, if he's in the Avs 1, Tays and Girard, I think I'd have interest in. I'm not sure I want to pay $4,600 for Graves. I'd rather find the money to get to Tays or the $100 for Girard. So Makar, Tays, Girard. maybe a little Vinny Dunn, but other than that, nothing on the Blues.
Yep, kind of agree with that. In net, Grubauer 8,500 on the road, assuming he plays. I assume is not in. I think they said it might even be Dubnyk tonight, but even if it's Dubnyk, it'd be 8,300 on the road. So I imagine we don't need to talk about them. Would Binnington at 7,500 interest you at home?
If the Blues were playing better, I mean, Binnington the past few games has played better. If I thought the Blues could hang, yeah, maybe. You know, Bennington's going to see a ton of shots. The one thing I will say, if it is Devin Dubnyk, I think one-offing Hoffman at 3,200 is okay. But 8,500 Grubauer, I'm out. Bennington 7,500. I wish he was a little cheaper. If he was like 7,200, I know the 300 is kind of just like it's like a mental thing. Like,
yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, right. Yeah. If like 7,500 is mid-range, 7,200 it's like, oh, we're punting, and Bennington's okay. Yeah. So like, I don't know. At that price, it's hard. It's kind of hard for me to click him in.
Yeah, because like at least at 7,200, it'd be like, oh, is it Binnington or is it Murray? Here, he's just like kind of on an island by himself. So yeah, I hear that. UFC 261, Usman versus Masvidal. Are you getting excited, Josh?
I mean, Usman's going to foot stomp him for 5 rounds, and he's going to 50-45 him.
All right. I don't know. Hey, I'll take a 5-round foot stomping. Don't mind watching those. Usman versus Masvidal is set for April 24th, and we here at Awesemo are giving you a great deal on an Awesemo Plus MMA monthly pass. Get 50% off your first month of Awesemo Plus MMA when you use the promo code UFC261. That's $14.95 for 30 days of Awesemo Plus MMA. This package includes full access to our fighter projections, ownership projections, top fighters tool, lineup builder, and our premium Slack. This is a great, great deal. $14.95 for 30 months of Awesemo Plus MMA. This offer is valid through next Saturday. That's April 24th. So stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus MMA today.
3 title fights in that card.
Yes, 3 title fights?
3 title fights, and it's the first time they're going to be full capacity in Florida.
So this is probably going to be a big contest night on DK then, probably, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, there you go. If anybody out there has ever wanted to get an MMA, here you go. $15 for a month, and you get a massive pay-per-view included in that next weekend. All right. Getting to our next game, we have the Vegas Golden Knights with a 3.3 implied goal total going into Los Angeles. The Kings have a 2.3 implied goal total. As always with both teams, we don't know these goalies. So I'll just leave it up to you. Take it where you want to go.
Yeah, I'm depressed. I can't tout Jeff Carter. But for real, like, ownership is interesting in this game. At least in the first round, it might change. But the Stevenson, Pacioretty, Stone line is like almost double the ownership of Marshall, Carlson, Smith, which is interesting. Either one, people are catching on that's an elite line, and that's certainly possible. But that Carlson line is going to get the depth matchups. They're not going to. They'll avoid Kopitar for the most part. Not that Kopitar is like a super like we're not going at him anymore. But where you do want to go after the Kings is the depth. So as much as I do like Vegas won tonight, getting the Kopitar matchup, I'd rather go to that second line at that ownership going against the depth. You know, Vegas 2 has been popular our season, and for that reason, I've been off them because, you know, for their price and ownership, they always have massive negative leverage. But tonight, it's a different story, and I think if this ownership holds or even creeps up a little bit on a 5-game slate, I really want that Carlson, Smith, Marchessault line going against, you know, Kempe, Anderson, Dolan, or Moore, Grundstrom, Lazat, Anthony Seal. Like, those names don't, you know, instill fear in me at all. I really like that second line. And don't get me wrong, I love Vegas 1. They're one of my favorite lines. They're always cheaper than Colorado 1. They're an elite line. Pacioretty and Stone combo is one of the best in the NHL. So I think there's obvious merit to going there. And, you know, like I said, the Kopitar matchup isn't what it was a few years ago. So I think you can go back to them for sure. The Vegas bottom 6, you know, outside of a Tuck one-off, I think I'm off them. But on the Kings side, if that Kopitar matchup is going to get the Stevenson, Stone, Pacioretty, I think I'm going to be off them in 1 to 3. If you know, want to have a little bit of MME, I guess that's an okay because you want to, you know, have some exposure to everything in 150 lineups. But for me, I'm probably going to be off them, which leaves like the depth, and I'm not really interested in that either. I mean, maybe a Kempe one-off. You I'm a Kempe guy, but with Carter gone, it's kind of hard to really get into the Kings depth. Like if you want to do a Kempe, Anderson, Dolan 2-man, I think that's okay. If you want to have a little bit of Kings one, that's okay. But for everything else, I'm probably going to be underweight on the Kings tonight.
Yeah, I'm not really loving the Kings either. I was digging into some of their stats over the last few weeks because they've had some really good stretches this year where they genuinely played very well. But Los Angeles, worst expected goals against in the league over the last 3 weeks at 3.1 expected goals against per 60 minutes, 3.06 actual goals against per 60 minutes. Any guesses on the second worst team by expected goals against besides Los Angeles over the last 3 weeks? I'll give you a hint. Los Angeles is playing them tonight. Las Vegas has the second worst expected goals against in the league at 5-on-5 over the last 3 weeks. Now, their goaltending obviously has bailed them out, and that's why they managed to get by. But that's one thing that's kind of keeping the Kopitar line in play for me a little bit is Vegas really hasn't been playing that well defensively lately. Offensively, they've been really good. So that's why I do have a lot of interest in Vegas too here tonight. Like you said, they are just an elite line. They've been really good this year. In an extended sample, we're looking at 3.0 expected goals for per 60, 2.3 expected goals against. Those are just phenomenal numbers for any line, especially with a line over as big a sample as they have. The one thing is they're broken up on the power play. So Jonathan Marchessault, power play 1. And then Riley Smith and William Karlsson are on power play 2. So that kind of sucks. But that also brings Alex Tuch into play for us. And if you're worried about Vegas 2 ownership creeping up a little bit or something like that, you can leave off Marchessault and throw on Tuch for that power play exposure. That's something that I'm completely fine with, especially where Los Angeles, Vegas's power play is generally not being great. But Los Angeles' penalty kill has just fallen off the map. Third worst by expected goals against in the league over the last 3 weeks. Vegas's has fallen a little bit, but I suspect that's more of a bump in the road than anything for them. I think they will be just fine. So yeah, I'm a little interest in LA1, a lot of interest in Vegas 2. If you want to play Vegas 1, I'm not going to say no. Josh was saying, they're an elite line. It's just the way I'm building my lineups tonight. I'm probably going to get to more Vegas 2. On the blue line, I think our regular guys are normally in play. Like Braden McNabb is the guy that sticks out to me because he's consistently playing over 20 minutes. Sean Walker at 4,500. I think that's getting a little too expensive. So besides correlating, what do you like here for defenseman?
Yeah, I agree with you on McNabb. I used him the other night. He had a couple block shots and shot on goal, but he was 2,800 and plays 20-25 minutes. So he's a fine punt. I think if you're using the Vegas second line or you're doing a Karlsson, Smith, Tuch, I think, Pietrangelo is the obvious correlation play, but I think I prefer Alec Martinez, especially if you need to get in some more. The $800 savings is big. If you're using that top line, obviously Shea Theodore makes sense. Any kind of power play, Shea Theodore. Pietrangelo is fine. Don't get me wrong. He's a great play. I think I just prefer the $800 savings to Alec Martinez.
Yep, I agree with you there. In net, we don't know who's going to start. It'll probably be Jonathan Quick for Los Angeles because Peterson played against Vegas a couple nights ago and then lost, and they like to rotate. So I think it'll be Quick for LA. Any interest in 7,100 Quick at home?
No. I mean,
okay.
Quick goes through these stretches where he's just he has he has the playoff Quick where he's just like a brick wall, but those games are few and far between. He's just name value at this point, I think.
Yeah, I hear that. I'm not super in. Okay, let me put it this way. Would you rather play a $7,000 Matt Murray or 7,100 Jonathan Quick?
I think I'd rather file for bankruptcy. No, I think it would be Matt Murray.
Okay, all right. But really bankruptcy.
Yeah.
All right, we got about 5 minutes left. Let's get through these games. Before we do, if you're not ready to get a premium subscription, the number way you can help us out, if you like the work that we do, is on this channel, is to subscribe to this channel. We need the subscriptions to help combat the YouTube algorithm so we can keep bringing these awesome NHL, PGA, MMA, NBA, NASCAR, and MLB shows to you. We have a lot of shows every day for free. So please throw us a subscribe and click the notification button if you want to find out whenever we do hit the air. All right, few minutes left. Anaheim 2.4 implied goal total going into San Jose. The Sharks have a 3.2 implied goal total. Bit of news here. Rudolph Balcers looks like he's going to the top line for the Sharks, with Kevin Labanc jumping down to the second line. Joseph Coronar is expected to start for the Sharks. He has one career NHL game. 23-year-old, I think they signed him. I don't think he's a draft pick even. So Joseph Coronar against, we don't even know who's going to go for Anaheim because it looks like they have 3 goalies in the rotation now. So I'll say Coronar against Gibson, but we just really don't know. What do you like here?
Yeah, so the Sharks top line is one of the highest owned that we have. You know, we have Labanc there right now, but Balcers is $800 cheaper. So I'd imagine that ownership may creep up. I know Labanc makes them fully correlated on Power Play 1, but Balcers is cheaper, so that may creep up the ownership. And you look at the Ducks top line ownership, 18%. Like I don't want anything to do with that. Like if they were 8%, I would still be like, no. Ducks top line is going to be a no for me, especially at that ownership. If I'm going to use the Ducks tonight, it's definitely going to be Comtois and Raquel. If you want to use Max Jones, Carrick, Terry, just because they're going to get, maybe if they see any time against Marlowe, like I would play a shoe against Marlowe at this point in his career. So I think that third line is okay. Like they fully correlate on Power Play 2. They're almost min price. If you're jamming in Colorado Power Play and another expensive defenseman, something like that, you can put them in. Sharks depth against, Joseph Colonar. This feels like the gross neck, thing. Like he's going to stand on his head, but like the Ducks shot volume does worry me. But if I'm going to use anyone on the Ducks, it's going to be Comtois and Raquel. Sharks top line, I think, is fine. Couture, Kane, Balcers. Matchups don't concern me. I think if I was going to use a line, it'd be Hertl, Meyer, and Labanc. They're still pricey. They're over $17,000 for the full line. But I think I prefer that a little bit more. But just because they're going to be a bit lower owned, the Kane Couture combo is super high owned at this point. So I think I'd dip down to Hertl, Meyer.
Yeah, I love Hertl and Meyer here tonight. They've been really good pretty much all year, regardless of who's been on their wing. I don't suspect Kevin Labanc will hurt them. He should only, in fact, help them. The ownership is just fine, coming in at 10%, right about where we have them as a top 2 stack. There's no stack on Anaheim that I'm afraid of by any stretch of the imagination. I'm out on Anaheim. That top line ownership is just absolutely insane. We have 3 guys up. We have 3 guys from the Anaheim Ducks at over 16%, and 2 guys over 18, hard pass. And beyond that, I would probably just one-off guys. I would one-off Comtois or I'd one-off Raquel. I'm just not someone that will be stacking Anaheim probably at any point for the rest of the year. I'm in big time on that San Jose 2 line, especially with Hertl and Meyer staying on the same power play unit together. You can throw in Burns with them for a little bit of added exposure, but you don't really need to. I really do like that second line. I'm with you. Quickly on the blue line, I think the only guy that jumps out for me is on the Anaheim side is actually Jacob Larson, assuming that he's actually in the lineup tonight. Min price, leads their defenseman in both shots per 60 and blocks per 60, and he's been playing about 18 and a half minutes of late. I like Jacob Larson as a full punt. What do you like here?
Yeah, Larson. They're all cheap. I think Drysdale's going to get the most, obviously, just because name value, he's shiny. But yeah, I agree. Larson or Manson for me on the Duck side. On the Shark side, I'm out on Burns. You want to play Burns, go for it. Carlson with that second line makes some sense. I don't really like Carlson, but he's cheaper than Burns and he correlates.
You playing either of the goalies? Like I said, are you playing Coronar, especially at 7,700?
I don't even know who that is. So, I consider him in Sharks lineups. If it's Gibson for the Ducks, I consider him. If it's Miller or Stellaris, I am out.
All right. I don't mind that. Yeah, I would play Gibson too if he were to start, but it's the last game of the night and we don't want to have to deal with that. I'm going to ask you for your hat trick pick. My hat trick pick is a guy that I think I've already picked twice this year and he hasn't come through. Hopefully, lucky number 3. I will say Kyle Connor is my hat trick pick for tonight. What do you have?
I'm going to say Jonathan Marchessault.
Jonathan Marchessault. All right, there you go. Marchessault and Connor are your 2 hat trick picks for tonight. For our producer, Tyler, for Joshua Harris, good luck tonight, everybody, and we will see you tomorrow.